in this video we are going to handle a case where we are providing a permission of view project, but we also want user to access his own project. Okay, so we don't want anyone to access other project by ID if we have given a permission of view project. That doesn't mean like that one will be able to access details of any other project which is not part of. So how we can restrict it? So we are going to add something like ownership. We are going to check in permission whether that user is an owner of that project, and this thing we can implement for any other resource as well. Like right now we are using it for project, and probably in future we can implement it with any other resource, like let's say any other thing, any other resource comes apart from the project, let's say comments or anything else. So we can build some similar functionality for that. So this video is going to be to be a longer video. So what I'm gonna do here is, like, without wasting much time, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create one decorator here. Let's say let's write one decorator, check ownership dot decorator dot ts. So I'll have to correct spelling decorator. Now it's correct, right? So how we create a decorator? So usually for decorators we are using set metadata, although we can use different way as well, but we just want to set metadata, especially here for this case. So how we want to use it? So let me just go back in the project, and in project controller, so let's say I want to use it this way: at rate check ownership. Just ignore red highlight right now since we are going to define this. So how we can check in ownership on a project, what things we will need here? So the basic things what we need is like it's a generic decorator, so we'll need a resource type. So let's say project, and then since whenever we want to check some ownership, probably we'll be passing some parameters. So we will passing some resource ID or something like that. So here as a resource ID or path name, what we can say, let's say path name. So we are going to put it as whatever we are passing a path name. So here in this case, if I'm using project ID, then I will use project ID. If I'm using ID, then I will be using ID. And now so let's do first thing. Let's create this check ownership decorator first and set these two properties, and then permission guard will access these things and do other stuffs. So if I go back in decorator check ownership, so I need to create one method check ownership, and so we are going to what we can do, we can just take some parameters here. So the first thing was resource, and let's say this is a string, since we'll always pass some string text here, and param name, this will also be a string. So we are going to define a param name. Now we can use set metadata decorator, which comes from NestJs common. And here what we can do, we will have to define one metadata key. So ownership is fine, and then second is the data which we want to set here. So I'm setting an object, and in object what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put resource, and then here we can add param name. All right, now this is done. And so once we, let's import this as well here, and now this is done. So when we'll actually execute this endpoint, it will set, or when we'll run this server, it actually set this thing here for this endpoint. And what will happen is we can use these properties to somehow calculate or find out whether this user who is logged in is actually an owner of this project ID. So how we are going to do that? So let's go back in the role. Under role, what I'm going to open is permission guard. In permission guard, similar to this, like I'm also going to add one more thing here, const. So we added a decorator, right? So in decorator, what we did is in so whatever we add in set metadata, we can get it from the reflector, right? So in reflector, we have like these two things. Either we can get it from the class as well, and we can get it from the handler as well. So we are going to use both of them, and we'll use right here. What we did is like get all and merge. So we were trying to merge all the roles, but in this case we are going to do override. So we'll override, we'll give priority to handler. Okay, it will always give priority to handler. So let's do this way. So what I'm gonna write a variable name here. So for variable name, what we can do is we can put metadata, and this is let's say, so we have already injected reflector, so I'm going to use reflector. Why this dot reflector? Okay, it should be in small. Let me fix it. Okay, reflector, and so I'm going to use get all and override. The first parameter is ownership, which we define in the decorator, where it went check ownership. If you notice here, we define it ownership. So same thing, we are going to write it as property name, and second parameter will be from where we want to get these details, from what context. So it should be the context dot get class and context dot get handler from both places. Let's say if there's something defined in the handler, then it will override the things from the class. Also, since we are using TypeScript, right, so we'll have to we should add types as well. So we can do this way, resource string, and we can put param name string. All right. Okay, now with this ownership metadata, what we can do, if I scroll down a bit, if I come here, has ownership, and these things we are doing it here till now, and now I want to add one more condition here. Okay, so I want to add one more condition. Let's say if user permissions, okay, this user permissions dot, I'm just thinking why this is not coming it as an array. That's fine, let's do this. Includes permission dot permissions. So permissions, I wanted to access in okay, so there are two things. So we'll create one super owner. And why we are creating super owner? So we also want to provide all rights to one of the our role. Otherwise, even admin will have to have ownership of that project. So there must be a way so that one role can uh, so that we can escape this check. So what I'm gonna do next here is, if I scroll it down a bit, and if I see here, so in permission, let's do one thing here. I'm just going to put one more property, super owner, and there what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna write super owner. And in this super owner, what I can do, I can just go back here in the rules permission, and I will add this permission here, permission dot super owner. Okay, now given that if user permission doesn't have the super owner, and next what we can do, if it has ownership metadata, if it has if it is super owner, then we can skip this verification. Otherwise, if I mean, if it is not a super owner and it has some ownership metadata, I mean, we have done setup for the metadata, like these things are required, these things are, I mean, these are the resource, these are the parameters for checking ownership. We have defined it here, and the user is not an owner. I mean, in short, what we can say, the user is not an admin. Then we are going to check whether the user is actually an owner of the project. So how we can do that? So to do that, what we are going to do in this condition, what we can do is, like, we can use we can destructure ownership metadata. So we had two properties, resource and param names, param name. All right. Now, so what we can do here, so we can also extract resource ID. This is the name of the resource, right? I mean, this is the param name, but we can also extract the resource ID. How we can do that? So in request, if you notice here in request, so uh, we are using this, where we are using this request for user, right? So what I want to do here is, let's say I can destructure user and I can also destructure params. So in request dot user, we also get not under user, but in request we also get request dot params. So instead of, I mean, using this twice, I have just restructured it here, and I will just update this line to user, and this params I can use it here to extract the value of resource ID. Let's say the project. So here if we are passing project ID, then it will actually give the value of the project ID. Okay. And now what we are going to, we are going to check uh, is owner. So I'm going to create a method here, and just below this whole method in the same class I will create one method. So let's say this dot, what I can say, check for resource ownership, and we are going to pass resource type, not resource ID, resource type, and then resource ID, and then this user ID. We'll have to verify whether this user ID is associated with this resource, so that's why we are passing this. And this await is giving error. So to fix this, what I need to do here is I need to make this method async. Alright, and also this will be a promise, so I can just do this one. Okay, let's create this method first. Okay, I will also make this async, since we are going to call database operations from here. And here I need to define, let's say, resource type string and resource ID string. No, this is going to be a number, and user.id. So this is going to be a number, and user ID, this is going to be a number. All right. Next, what we can do here is we can use switch case, and we can put a resource type here, and in this resource type we can add one more case, resource type, and here in the case we can add project for now, and for default case let's return false as of now. For each resource we are going to create one method owns something like owns project, owns something with the name of resource, and that will check whether the project exists for the given user ID. Okay, for now we have just one project. Later on we can create for the others as well. So what we are going to do here is we are going to, so we can do this way, like we can create a method in the project service as well. But the problem here we'll face later on is like we'll have to inject so many dependencies here. I mean the project dependency and further so on. Later on we will have many other services. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna create one uh, shared service kind of thing. So let's say what I'm trying to say is like, let's say I'm gonna create one more service here, private ownership service, and this will be ownership service. Okay, and right now we have not created this service, so let's do that. In common, what we can do, under service I'm going to create one class, ownership service dot ownership dot service dot ts, and export class ownership service, and since this is a service we'll have to mark it as injectable, and it is a singleton, so scope we are not going to define anything here in the scope. Let's import injectable, and we'll see what dependencies, what repository we need to import. We'll fix that. Before we proceed, what we are going to do, we are going to import this in this, add it in the providers. Since if we don't add it in the providers, as well as if we don't export it from here, we'll not be able to use it in other modules. So I'm going to quickly import it in the permission guard. So I just need to do this, and now since this is imported, what I'm gonna fix right now is why this is giving error. Okay, for the because of this. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to go back in ownership service, and I will create one method here. Let's say for the projects, so what I can do, I can just create one owns project method. Let's say async owns project, and this method will return the project. Okay, so for now let's say here if I go back in permission guard, I can just call ownership owns project, and here we can pass resource type, resource ID, user ID. Okay, why this is giving error? I'm doing typos. I think my keyboard is doing some issue. resource ID. Now it is correct. Resource ID. That's fine. In this owns project, we need to add some parameters as well in owns project. Okay, so the first thing we need here is project ID, number, and user ID. I don't think we need to pass resource ID, resource type. Okay, so now what we can do, we can work on this own project, and for that I'm going to create a constructor, and I will need to inject a repository here. So how we can inject? We'll create private read only project repository, and this will be of type repository, and here we are going to pass project entity. Okay, and okay, let me just import it. And now I will have to annotate it with the inject repository, and this here we need to pass project entity. Okay, and now we can use this, but before we use, we need to register this entity with the module as well. So here with the type ORM, I will have to pass here project. Alright, now in ownership service, what we can do here, let's make it this way, and here what we are going to use, custom query. So we are going to work on project repository, but we'll be using custom query. So let's use this create query builder, and here we'll pass a name, an alias for the our table. So let's say project, and then we'll add inner join. What we can do, we can just pass a property name on which we want to add inner join. So for a project, let me just go back in the project again to show you like how this works. So in project, if you noticed, we have this assigned users. So this is many to many, a different table. So we have three tables right now. Okay, the one project table, one this project users table, and the last one is users table. So it will automatically do the inner join steps. We just need to tell it like I mean, it will automatically going to add condition in SQL queries. We just need to tell like what on what we want to add inner join. So here this is the property on which we want to add inner join. And so here what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna add project dot assigned users, and then you can use user as alias. So this table is user as alias, and where, so we'll have add condition for the selection. For let's say we want to filter now, after adding, let's say for this project, we have these two tables, and now although we have added inner join, so all the project and user details will be available, but we don't want all the rows, right? We don't want all the rows from the inner joins. We want to have the roles based on the project ID and based on the user ID. So what we can do, we can add some filter. So how we can add filter? We can add some condition project.id, and to add a condition here we write this way, project ID, and we'll have to pass variable like this. So this project ID will be passed here, and then Also, I want to add one more condition. So for that we'll have to use and where, and this will be on user. So user dot id and user id. I'll have to pass this variable user id. Okay, now this is going to give a particular project for a user id. Okay, this is going to filter based on these two condition, and I'm going to get one item. If it returns something, means there's a project, it owns the project, right? Otherwise there's no project. So let me just go back in permission guard, and are we getting some error? If I save this, it should work. Okay, let me try this again. I'm still able to access the project 6, but if I go in get profile, I just have assigned project as 2. Now we need to fix this in such a way, like projects, when we try to access the project 6 for this user, it should throw uh, I mean it should throw error, something like unauthorized or something that way. Okay, so how we can fix this? So although we are getting it here, but we are not doing uh, anything with this is owner. So the last thing we need to do here is we need to add conditions. We need to throw error based on this is owner. Okay, so what we are going to do next is we are going to add a check is owner. So if this is not an owner, if it doesn't return anything, it will not be an owner, and so we can throw some error. Let's say throw new unauthorized exceptions, and this will be you do not own this resource. All right. Now let's try this again. Let's try to access the project 6. Okay, so I'm still getting able to access this project. Alright, so now it's time to debug. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna stop my server. I might have done some mistake again. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start it in the debug mode, and in this debug mode I will be adding one breakpoint here. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna click on send again. Okay, let me just move to the next line. I'm gonna remove these two breakpoints. So currently the ownership metadata is undefined, I guess. Okay, so we have done this spelling mistake. So I don't know if you might have noticed this while I was writing, so probably would have fixed this already. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna stop my server, debugging server, and I'm gonna fix the spelling mistake, ownership, and let me just restart my server normally, and this time I will again try to execute the same endpoint, and if again it doesn't work, then I will have to again debug. Yeah, now we are getting this error log. So you do not own this resource. If I try to access project with project id 2, I probably will be able to access this id. So we have restricted user one more next level. I mean, based on the ownership, we can restrict any user for any resource. So this is very powerful stuff, and we can implement it for, I mean, any different resources. So we are going to work on it further, and we'll try to add it in the different controllers as well. So for time being, for this video, I mean, that's all. So thank you for watching. Have a nice day.